Welcome to the email dynamic flat files demo job. So this is kind of an interesting one here. We have this situation where we want to take a flat file and email it. And RackForms has long since been able to do that, but in this case, we actually want to take it one step further, and we want to create that flat file that we send dynamically. So as a setup to this job here, I have a really simple form page where all I'm doing is basically just creating some content that I'm going to put into, in this case, a sample text file. So I just have one single form field. Notice that it's called content of text file. And so that is going to be used on the second page. So it turns out then that the second page is where all of the magic lies. So this really happens in 3 steps. The first step is that we have some PHP code here. Let me scoot this up, where we're going to create both a file name and the data for our actual flat file item. And so the flat file name is going to be, in this case, a cool little trick where we can say the entry key of the form. So entry key is something that not a lot of users know about, but it can be handy for, in this particular case, things like this. Basically, the entry key is created every time a user visits a form page on RackForms, and the entry key is actually unique to that user. Now, the reason why we're using this as a file name is this is unique to that user. So if we're going to be creating files on the file system, we want to make sure that those files have unique names. And we also, and this is really important, don't want to put that in control of the form user, right? We don't want the user to type in something and say, this is the name of the file. We always want to create that ourselves, because if we give the users control over that, then that could be a huge security hole. And so we're going to create a unique name, and we are in control of that. So that is file name. We're going to see that used both in the flat file name of the item that we save, and then also in the email. But first, though, we do have our data, and this one is simply going to be the content of text file. So in other words, we're taking this form field right here, and we're going to use that as the contents of our data. Now, in this particular case, this isn't really necessary. We could also use the F token in the data composer right here. So I could literally just say capital F, open close brace, and then this. But I just thought it'd be kind of interesting to show that we can use raw PHP data here as well. In other words, I can create something right here, and then I can use that as the data for my item. And so that's what we're doing here. In this case, notice that both of these have a fallback. So in some rare case that you don't have like sessions enabled on your test environment, we're just going to create a file called sample.txt. Of course, the trick here would be that if you had a production environment, you would not want to have this at all. You would just like fail at this point, because we wouldn't obviously want to overwrite anybody else's entry. And then finally, notice that we have a default value of just blank data here if we don't have any text supplied here. This one is a little bit more lax, right? Like maybe we just will have an empty file, but we could also add a die condition where we're just not going to send this if we didn't have some content in there. Okay, so that's the setup. So we have, again, just to review here, we have something called file name and data. So then we use those guys in the flat file like this. I'm going to have data equal the flat file data, and I'm going to have file name equal the file location and name. So here you'll notice I'm actually putting this // right here, which means the local directory that the form is running in. As a matter of fact, we'll actually go there right now. So let me go to htdocs, RackForms, output forms, email dynamic flat files. So in other words, we're going to just save it in this folder right here. Scoot this over, and then we are going to append the data from this right here. So that is the flat file module. So nothing really special going on there. We just have our dynamic name, and we have our data being assigned to it. So here is where the cool bit happens. So in the email item, where I want this item to be sent, I just have right now in this case a very simple, I'm just sending it to my info@rackforms.com email address. The magic happens in the static attachment area right here. So we have 3 fields that we care about. The first is, what do we want this static file to be called when I submit and email it? And so we can actually leave this blank. It'll be called the same name as whatever our file name right here was. But in this particular case, it's going to be a big, long, undecipherable string of characters. And so we actually don't want to do that. I just want to call this text file. However, this is a dynamic field, so maybe I would have like first name space last name, right? You do something like this, and this would be then a text file called first name plus last name, and then we could even append .text on there, and then that's what it would be. In this case, though, I'm just hard coding a value. The static attachment path then is going to be the name of the file. So in this case, I'm saying the static attachment path, or I should say the flat file is called file name. And so therefore in the email, that's exactly what it's going to be called as well. So this path should be noted that this is the path and the file name of what it is. Finally, and this is where the real magic comes in terms of this as a feature here, we now have a new option called delete static attachment file after sending. And so what that means is if I don't have that checked and I just run this form right now, you're going to notice that I'm going to hit my submission page and I'm just going to leave this big ugly file on my system right here. So this is my entry key right here, that value, and then this is going to just sit there and reside on the server. And of course we don't want that. We actually want to delete that file, and so now we can check this box and RackForms will automatically delete the file when I submit the form. So now I can submit this through same as I did before, but our form folder stays nice and clean. So generally speaking, that's what we're going to want to do, is actually delete this item, because we usually don't want those temp files sitting around the system. So as a way of quick summary then, so I created a basic text input field here on a very simple form page. I had a single form field called content of text file. Then in the PHP block, I created two variables, the file name based on the entry key of the form with the fallback as sample.txt, and then the data, which is just equal to whatever the content of this file was right here. Then we had a flat file item where the flat file data just becomes data, though just to be clear, we could have also just used content of text file, right? So we could have just used the simple token right here. That would have been just fine. And then we had the file name and location as file name as we described it right here. So file name is going to equal whatever the entry key is. Then when we actually send this email file, we actually have three options that we care about. The first is, well, what do we want to call this file? In this case, again, as we saw, we have like this big ugly name. So I actually want to call it something a little bit nicer. So we call it text-file.txt. And then finally we had, well, where is this file located? And we then pointed to the original name of the file, and then we make sure we delete it after we send it. And that's basically it then. It's a unique little window there into a little bit of custom PHP coding, but also doing something kind of powerful, you know, creating files on the fly, but also, and this is really important, doing it safely as well. As always, any questions about this or any other jobs that you see, please let us know. info@rackforms.com, and thanks for watching.